on the issue of potentially racial issues, let's get into the white farmer class action lawsuit against Biden for discrimination. Now, Robert, it was a 255-page motion. I didn't read it, so I just up as much as I could without actually reading the motion. I skimmed through it briefly. Bottom line, from what I understand, is that as part of the COVID relief package, the government is giving certain benefits to farmers, among other people, but we're focusing only on the farmers. Those benefits involve loan forgiveness and basically an additional, cash injection, an additional amount given to the farmers, except only based on ethnicity, in that they're targeting racial minority farmers for this benefit and not all farmers. And so one farmer in particular out of Texas filed a class action lawsuit on the basis that this is just outright discrimination, giving grants to farmers, but only non-white farmers. I think that's the essence of the lawsuit, right? And that's the essence of the program that is at issue here?
Yes. So the plaintiff happens to also be the Secretary of Agriculture of Texas, but he's only suing in his individual name. And this is one of the first suits brought by the America First Legal Group, which was founded by Stephen Miller, supported by Mark Meadows and others. And people have asked me about it. I said, I don't know. I said I'm going to wait and see, watch and see approach as to how effective they'll be. But I think this was a solid first effort out of the gate. Because what happened was, as part of COVID relief, Biden limited COVID relief for farmers to only those who are, quote, socially disadvantaged. And then they turned around and defined socially disadvantaged as from a group that has experienced racial discrimination, but then went further and said there's no group of white people that has ever been subject to social discrimination. But then we're a little bit unclear on what percentage ethnicity you need it to be. So, for example, this plaintiff has, African-American ancestors, has multiple racial ancestors. They make the point that there's a wide range of groups that may have white skin who have had a history of discrimination against them: Italians, Irish, Jews, a whole bunch of people.
That's what Miller said. He said he's part Irish and that the Irish have faced discrimination. So therefore, and that was one of the arguments I read.
Correct, especially to be race neutral. The problem with this, the problem is with the laws. They're trying to get around how the law is written itself, though not entirely. They say the law should just be enjoined, period. But definitely the particular application that Biden has chosen to make here. Basically, it's a big sign that says white farmers need not apply. Even if, and especially in this context, because this is about COVID relief, for where farmers were hurt, not really because of COVID, but hurt because of all the lockdowns that the governments required or compelled, as where COVID was the excuse or pretext for that. So they deprive farmers of their market, sometimes deprive farmers the ability to even go out and farm, sometimes forced farmers to destroy products. So in that context, why should race be a governing basis by which COVID relief is issued? So that's problem number one. Problem number two is, of course, constitutionally, the federal government is prohibited from racial discrimination and racial prejudice. And I think that they have a very sound, very strong constitutional legal claim. They filed a suit in the Western District of Texas, I believe the Austin division, but there's a lot of conservative judges on the federal side in the Western District of Texas in Austin. And so I think that there's good grounds for it. So I think the suit is the right suit legally, constitutionally. It's just whether, are we going to allow open, overt racial discrimination and by the federal government in distribution of federal resources for something that doesn't relate at all to racial prejudice or racial discrimination?
So that was the question I was going to ask, and forgive it, it's going to be a totally ignorant question, but how did the state, or how did the federal get around affirmative action? I mean, that I guess the idea is that it's responding to a specific racial issue, and therefore it can be justified, whereas subsidies to farmers is not?
Well, affirmative action has always been controversial, and the Supreme Court has limited its ability to happen. At one time, they approved a limited version of it. Then they came back and suggested, no version of it is okay. And it's sort of been an open question. And the big one that was going to go up until the Biden administration interfered and prevented it from going to the U.S. Supreme Court was the open discrimination by Harvard University against Asian Americans. And so, in my view, it's all unconstitutional and all illegal. But the courts have turned a blind eye to aspects of it. And so we'll see, are they willing to be overt? Because this is the most overt of them all. This isn't about, because of a legacy of disparate impact, we're going to provide a particular advantage to a particular group, like, say, in loan programs. This is taking it a whole new level and saying, we'll just racially discriminate whenever we want, wherever we want, however we want in federal programs, even when the program has no relationship to racial issues.
I watched Mark Lamont Hill. Now, I don't know if he's as well known. I don't know if he's well known. I saw his YouTube channel and watched his take on this particular issue, and I was thoroughly unimpressed with the reasoning of his take, which was that, white people, this is paraphrasing, but he said white people only get up in arms when they get ignored or when they say, hey, I'm white and I want something that is a privilege. But what I understood from what he said is that he said it was like 25% of farmers were black, and I understood it as only being like 1.5% of farmers that are black, or that would be the object of this subsidy in the first place. So, first question: which stat is right? It's 1.5% of American farmers are black, or is it a bigger number?
To my knowledge, it's very low. So unless he's making some historical reference, like from a century ago, but I mean I've not. Everything I've heard is that there's not many black farmers today.
Okay, and now the second question then is going to be, I guess, from the
now he might mean 25% all groups, like you include Latinos and Asian Americans, because I think they are also included in this group.
Okay, the second question then is going to be, would it be financially feasible to give this to all farmers? I mean, is it even economically feasible to offer this program to all farmers? And is this a way of, I want to say, scoring some virtue points by offering something that's ultimately going to only touch a minimal amount of people, farmers in the first place, because of the sheer numbers, whereas it would be impractical and impossible to offer on a broad scale to all farmers?
Maybe that's part of their excuse for why they're giving the relief that they are. But I mean, that it doesn't make a lot of sense, because I mean, it's not like they're holding back on the checkbook these days. So I mean, they're printing cash. That meme with the Federal Reserve guy going, the machine goes burr 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 with the dollar bills just flying. That's what they're doing. So it would be peculiar to say, well, we have plenty of money, except not the white farmers. So they're spending everywhere else.
And it's I couldn't believe it, but I just have to take for granted there's something I'm not getting about the program. But it doesn't seem that there's
anything.
It's meant
to be overt. I mean, it's meant to be the predicate of reparations. It's meant to say we can openly and overtly racially discriminate, and they're just doing so in a space they think they can get away with it, and they're hoping the courts green light it so they can expand it and extend the principle just broadly. Start saying we want. Basically, they just want to say we would like to give money only to Democratic voting groups. I mean, how long before they just do that? They say if you can prove you're a Democrat, a registered Democrat, then you get federal money, and if you're not, you don't get anything. Just one step away from it.
Okay, so we'll see. Time frame going forward. Does it? First of all, it's a class action lawsuit out of Texas. People have to opt in if they want to do it. What's the rule in Texas?
Well, first there'll be a motion to dismiss, and it'll be whether they survive the motion to dismiss. And then later through discovery, they get to the class certification stage. That's much farther down the road. So I think it will be the big question up front will be whether or not they survive a motion to dismiss. If they do that, then they're in the game.